first week of September, and as such, it's Season 3 of Sonic September, a special little thing I do every year to look at one of my favorite video game characters' series of games. As we've seen so far, some of these games are good, but others, not so much. To start it all off for 2016, I played Sonic Adventure, a game that everyone seems to enjoy, which actually kind of shocked me a bit, because from what I've heard, Sonic went downhill when upgrading to 3D. But I wanted to give it a chance, so I purchased it on the PSN store. As far as I can recall, the game was originally a Dreamcast game, but I played it on my PS3, as I've never owned a Dreamcast. The game involves Sonic, along with his pals, as they try to piece together Robotnik's new plan. It involves grabbing Chaos Emeralds and feeding them to a Chaos creature, which then gets larger, stronger, and, as a result, much more dangerous. In fact, the first level of the game is a boss battle against this Chaos. I apologize for the slow video, I'm not sure why exactly this happened. But in any case, after this battle, you run into Robotnik, and he claims that this beast is called Chaos, God of Destruction. It's a pretty lame looking god if you ask me. And apparently it doesn't have Sonic too worried if he's freaking lounging on a chair in some resort afterwards. After all of these scenes, which includes watching Tails crash, you control Sonic again in a hub-like level. There are no enemies and only a very rare ring appearance. From here, you get to explore the level, looking for secrets, or more importantly, the next stage. These adventure scenes, as they're called, feel a bit empty. The city that you run around in is fairly large, but there's just not a lot to do in it, and it's often a bit confusing on where you're actually supposed to go. I've had to consult a walkthrough or ask my friend Johnny a few times where I was intended to go. I don't know, I just didn't care for these adventure scenes. Thankfully, the real meat of the game is in the action scenes, which are, again, the game's own wording. Although you do get to play as 6 or so characters, each one progresses through the same levels, just in a different order with a different goal. Honestly, I didn't play through all of the characters because I was getting extremely bored with the game, but I did finish Sonic and play part of Knuckles. Sonic is your more traditional get from the start to the finish, but Knuckles has you traversing levels looking for 3 emeralds. It's a bit disappointing with that, to be honest. But let's go back to how the main game works, at least for Sonic. It is a Sonic game, so you probably know the basics. Sonic runs as fast as he can, collecting rings and defeating robots. That formula hasn't changed in the tradition of 3D. Speed is still a focal point, and sometimes this can be simply dizzying. Sonic Adventure does a great job conveying the sense of speed. Every stage is drawn in a way to make sure that you are going as fast as humanly possible. There are plenty of springs, ramps, speed boosts, and loops. There's also a good amount of enemies, but they're almost never a real threat. Instead, your main enemy in this game is the pitfalls. If you're not completely aware on the platform that you're on, and you decrease speed or lose control of Sonic, you're probably just going to fall to your death. Take the first stage for example. I was running around a loop, just suddenly stopped, and fell to my death. And this wasn't the only time. It also occurred in level 2 when going around a path made of a wind of leaves. Apparently I wasn't going fast enough, and Sonic just plummeted to his death. It can be a bit frustrating. And even worse, sometimes you'll just have no choice but to come to a dead halt. Sometimes when running full speed ahead, you'll ram into a wall because the pathway is so narrow, and Sonic will just stop abruptly. Basically, Sonic doesn't bounce off of things. He just smacks them and stops, which leads to some frustration when trying to move smoothly throughout the levels. The camera doesn't really make things any easier. You can use the right analog stick to give yourself a quick look around, and the L1 and R1 buttons rotate the view, but it moves way too slowly for it to be entirely useful. It's not really a major problem until the final stages of the game, where it seems that all of the problems with Sonic Adventure culminate into one final level. In addition, there are times, especially in the final segments of the game, where the camera is just zoomed in way too closely, making it even harder to successfully track Sonic's movements. When you have a small moving platform and a hole underneath, you might waste a few lives just trying to get the hang of the area. In addition to simply bouncing off the head of an enemy, or rolling through them, he now has a special homing attack, performed by pressing the jump button a second time while airborne. This move is extremely helpful when trying to defeat Robotnik's minions, which normally only take one hit to begin with. At times though, the hit detection can be a little bit sketchy. There were times I feel I definitely defeated an enemy, only to take damage and lose all my rings. Bastards. Even with the awful camera and occasionally wonky controls / hit detection, the game is still fairly easy. I mean, sure, I thought that the Genesis Sonic games weren't exactly challenging, but they still took some practice to complete them. Sonic Adventure, on the other hand, feels like a walk in the park for about 95% of the game. The enemies that you do encounter are predictable, and the bosses are laughable. As I said, the platforming is really the biggest challenge, and that was solely due to camera issues. If I can get to the final stage with nearly 30 lives, it's way too simple. There are some other things I must mention. The graphics are fairly good, for the most part, but I can't help but wonder why more detail wasn't given to the human NPCs that you'll encounter in the adventure stages. They just look bland. Not to mention that there's no animation for them. If I was walking down the street and saw a blue hedgehog and a yellow fox with two tails running at Mach speeds, I think I'd freak out a bit. I also feel that the level design was really good for the most part, but at the end of the game, the quality tapers off. The final egg stage is just a bit lackluster in design, especially when compared to the lush forest stage, or even the first level, which takes place on a beach that at a point shows a bridge being destroyed by a large whale. This is incredibly cool to watch, and I wish more detail like that was put in the later stages. Most disappointing of all is the casino stage, which is normally my favorite in the 2D games, but not here. It's more of a throwback to Sonic's Spinball, and the pinball minigames are unexpectedly slow. Very disappointing with that. And the game does give you a 3D snowboarding stage, which, although marginally fun, I can't help but feel it was taken directly from Final Fantasy VII. It just feels nearly identical in control. Even with these flaws, Sonic Adventure is a really fun game, but there is still one thing I need to talk about, and it makes me cringe every time I witness it. The voice acting. Good lord, is it bad. Not quite Resident Evil bad, but bad nonetheless. The one-liners you hear are just plain bad, but the full conversations are really atrocious. There's a noticeable pause in between each line spoken, which might be attributed to the hardware of the time, but even so, the quality of acting is just not par for the course. Even the hints that you can find are spoken in an annoyingly cheery voice, and if you suck at the final boss battle, be prepared to hear Robotnik taunt you every 5 seconds. That shit gets old really fast. I still need to talk about the music, then I think I can start wrapping up this week's review. For the most part, it's really enjoyable. Each level's theme sounds appropriate, whether it be the jazzy casino theme, the relaxing yet high-paced beach stage, or the industrial theme in that flying sky deck level. It may not be something you put on your phone to listen to on the subway ride to work, but it won't make you mute the TV in disgust. That's about it for Sonic Adventure. I'm aware that I'm skipping a few things, such as the Chaos Garden, which is what those little creatures you save after defeating enemies are used for, or the other characters such as Big the Cat or Amy Rose. But truthfully, I just didn't play the game enough to really offer an opinion on them. I really just got a little bored with it. Perhaps if there were a larger variety of stages between each character, I would have given it more of a chance, but I was content playing this game as Sonic and completing his campaign. Overall, I'd say Sonic Adventure is a pretty decent game, but it doesn't appeal to me enough to warrant fully completing it. I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there that enjoy a lot more than I did, but that's pretty much the way for literally every game ever made. Final score? 7 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.